Hello, hello, hello. Dang it. Okay, I think I'm here. Um, Hopefully, I won't run into any problems, but we've been having a little bit of an internet connection issue here. And I'm going to shut a couple things down real quick, guys. I apologize. So, good morning. It's 11:30 Central Standard Time out here on the prairie in Central Illinois. And happy Thanksgiving. It's getting cold outside. It's certainly cold here. I don't know where you are, and I don't know what the temperature is where you are, but hopefully it's warmer than here. Happy Thanksgiving. And, it's crazy because Thanksgiving has changed so much over the years, hasn't it? I mean, it's changed for me. We live now, our Thanksgiving is probably not like your Thanksgiving, or maybe it is, but Thanksgiving, when you get my age, you can look back and you can remember the way it used to be and the way it's not anymore, because it used to be to where you would go to grandma and grandpa's house, or you go to aunt and uncle's house, or, the whole family would come to our house for Thanksgiving. And, all the matriarchs of the family, my grandmother, who was a great cook, and the aunts and my mom and everybody, they would be out in the kitchen preparing all these big meals. And you didn't even come into the kitchen. If you walked into the kitchen, to get an olive or something, you get your hand slapped and they send you away. Go play. We'll tell you when lunch is ready. Get out of the kitchen. But it's not that way anymore. It's not that way anymore. And I miss that. Really, I do. Because now, the matriarchs of the bloodline are mostly gone, and it's just changed. It's just changed. Now we're the ones who have to fix the Thanksgiving meal. And it's pretty interesting this year because my kids got me a smoker, and I love cooking smoked meats out on that smoker, but never thought in 1,000 years, when they got me the smoker, I was thinking of, in the springtime, in the summertime, I'd be out there and smoke some salmon or smoke, whatever. And not in 1,000 years did I imagine that they were going to come and ask me to smoke a turkey or two. And you guys are probably all much more experienced than I am with preparing turkeys. I'm not, but to me, it's kind of when you get into the smoking side of things, it's about a 3-day process, and it is cold here. It is cold. It's not like, we're out in the middle of the prairie, out kind of between cornfields, out in the middle of nowhere in central Illinois, and it's cold out and it's frozen. And I've got to be outside preparing to smoke a turkey or two, and so that everybody gets fed. But anyway, I digress, as I do. Hey, I wanted to jump on with you today, and I've got a pretty interesting topic here that I like to talk about, and I'm going to kind of run through it pretty quick, and hopefully it'll give you some ideas that you can take and implement like right away, because these are now, the ideas I'm going to share with you today, and these strategies are things that you could literally, I mean, you could start to implement this week. Well, not this week, but on Friday, you might be able to, if you, if you've recovered from Thanksgiving, but definitely next week. And between now and the end of the year, you could begin to implement these concepts, and it's going to change your business by spring. Okay. And it's going to generate more leads for you, generate more business. And, it's a very simple concept that you are absolutely going to love. If you're outgoing, if you like to meet people, which I'm guessing if you're a realtor or if you're a builder rep, you're probably, I don't know if you're an extrovert necessarily, but you probably are used to and meeting people and like to meet new people. And so I'm going to talk to you and give you a couple of ideas today very quickly about how to expand your sphere of influence. And I'm calling this Quick Tip Wednesday because we're going to fly through it pretty quick. So, one of the ideas that I absolutely loved when I first got into real estate, and even before I was specializing in new construction, I loved this idea of a sphere of influence. And I hadn't heard that before. I'd been in sales for a long time, been a executive recruiter, headhunter for many, many years, did very, very well with it. And I knew a lot of people, but I never really heard this idea of sphere of influence. And at least not the way we talked about it in real estate. And the interesting thing that I saw when I started to understand this concept of the sphere of influence is that you can grow your sphere of influence very, very quickly if you do certain strategies. Now, some of these strategies I didn't learn in real estate. Actually, to be quite frank, I learned them as a recruiter, as a headhunter. And, in recruiting, which I would did for my first career or my earlier career before real estate, you have to learn how to grow your network very, very fast every day, every week, all the time. You're constantly on the bubble to go, 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 and get that network going. And so that was kind of just ingrained in my business DNA that I had a responsibility every day as a recruiter to go find the person who fits for the job. Guess what? It's not all that different from what we do as realtors and from what you do as a realtor. Um, because every day and every week, if we've got a house to sell, we need to go find a buyer for that house. If we've got a buyer, we need to go find a house for that buyer. And so we've got this extreme urgency to go complete that transaction, get that transaction started, and move through it very quickly. But in recruiting, it was kind of just built into the way that we operated every day, because every day, we would go and we'd train from usually 7 o'clock to 8 a.m. And at 8 a.m., boom, it's like, the bell rang, you hit the phone and you go, 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 go till noon. And then you take a break and you go from 1 o'clock till 4:30, and you're just going, 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 looking for the next person who fits with the thing that you're looking for. And it was all this, it was on the phone. And I realized that that's kind of old school, and that's old school thinking. But I tell you what, it absolutely worked, and it works today. Now, I'm not going to talk to you about phone calling today, so don't get scared, because I know some people kind of get intimidated by making cold calls. That's not what I'm going to talk to you about. This is actually easier than that. But the point I wanted to make is that, in real estate, as a realtor, whether you specialize in new construction or you don't, you need to have this urgency in you to be growing your sphere of influence. Okay. And there are ways that you can grow your sphere of influence very, very quickly. And I'm going to share a couple of them with you today, specifically as it relates to new construction. Okay. And when I think of sphere of influence, I kind of think of it like this. I'm gonna share a. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I got it set up here. Okay, cool. I'm gonna share a visual with you if I can get to it here. Okay. So, when you think about sphere of influence, we think about, first of all, we think about, well, who do I know? Who am I connected with? And if you haven't done this exercise, you really should do this exercise sometime, where you start to uh, literally create a drawing, or you can do it in a database, but I've done it in drawings before, and you start to create an idea of where are all your centers of influence. Okay, here's you in the middle, and you begin to think about, in all these different categories, what are the different categories where you know people? Well, maybe it's church, maybe it's your neighborhood, maybe it's family, maybe it's real estate, maybe it's builders. And so you begin to think of all these sphere of influence, and you start to identify who some of those target people are. Okay. And one of the things that you want to do in your sphere of influence is, as you're drawing, and yours is going to be much, much bigger than that, but what I would do is get a big sheet of paper and start to draw this out. Here's you in the middle, and start to identify who are some of these target people, okay, that are a part of your sphere of influence. And you can start thinking in terms of categories, and then very quickly you can start to focus in on who are some of the specifics, who are some of the specific people in each of those categories that you have or you want to have in your sphere of influence. One of the things you can do when you're growing your sphere of influence is particularly to be thinking about who are influencers. And now that's a really important thing to do, because if you start to identify, well, not just that, I in home building I know John, but you want to start to identify within home building, and let's talk about home building. Who are all the builders that and who are the developers that but you even want to think in terms of who are some of the people who are more influential within that. Who are the thought leaders, or who are the people who are most connected within your sphere of influence within home building. But here's the ideas that I wanted to share with you. When you're building your thinking in terms of your sphere of influence, okay, one of the things that I learned very quickly in new construction, when I began to specialize in new construction, is there is actually a way that you could build out a whole ecosystem within home building. And you absolutely should. You absolutely should begin thinking of the larger ecosystem of all the people you know or could know or should know within home building. And there's a way, and I've done this, and you can do it too. There's a way to create an ecosystem within home building to where you are getting ongoing, continual leads from people that you know within home building. So I want to talk to you about that. And one of the ways that we should start to think about it is not just who do I know directly, but always you want to begin to think about it in terms of who do they know, right? And so when you're putting together your sphere of influence, and I know maybe this sounds pretty basic to you, hopefully you've done this, but if you haven't, I want you to think about it. And you begin thinking about, with each person within your sphere of influence, what are their sphere of influence? Who do they know? Who are the contact people? Because really, here's you, okay, right here. Here's you. Let me put that down there. You. Um, well, it's kind of hard to write with a mouse, but here's you in the middle. And as you're beginning to think of your sphere of influence, you don't just want to think about the categories and then the people that you know, but you want to begin to think in terms of who do they know? Because you want to always think at least two levels out. And so it's not about who you know necessarily, it's about who do they know. And guess what? They all know a bunch more people. And so when you begin to think about it this way, you start to realize that your sphere of influence is not just the 20 people or the 100 people you know, but how many people do they know? And I think what we might do, in fact, next week is, actually take this a little bit further and talk about how do you get referrals? How do you ask for referrals in a very non-salesy, non-pleady way? There is a way that I learned when I was recruiting as a headhunter of where you can get leads all the time on an ongoing basis, all the time. You can have a continual stream of leads when you learn this process. And it begins with this. Okay. It begins with beginning to identify, well, who is your sphere of influence? And then who is their sphere of influence? Now, you may not know all of these people's names, and you probably don't, but you need to think in terms of who do you know? Who does this person know? Here's Bill, here's Sam, here's Joanne, here's Susan. Who does Bill know? Okay. And start to think in terms of those people who also have big networks. Okay. And next week, I'll get into a little bit more with you guys. If it's something that's interesting or helpful to you, I'll get into specifically how do you get Bill, Sam, Susan, and Joanne and so forth to give you all their sphere of influence. Okay. It's not hard to do. It's just a different way of thinking about it. I think a lot of times we think, of here's, I think of myself, and if we've gone this far, we begin to put together, well, who are my sphere of influence? But I want you to begin to think about it one level out. Okay. Who do each of these people know that need to become part of my sphere of influence? And then like this person's can be brought into your sphere of influence, and then their sphere of influence is going to become your sphere of influence. So, that's a mouthful, but it absolutely is it's a game changer when you begin to think this way and you begin to realize that your sphere is much, much bigger than maybe what you've been thinking of. I mean, it's exponentially bigger, and it's not hard to do. It is not difficult to do once you learn the patterns of being able to ask for referrals, and in a very non-salesy, non-pleady way. In fact, you can position yourself, and you begin to position yourself in the minds of your sphere of influence, that and begin to kind of position where they're automatically going to be trained to refer to you the people that they know. I'll say that for next week. But the first thing today is, I want you to think about, when you identify your sphere of influence, start thinking about who their sphere of influence is. And you can do it in the same way. So let's say here, I'm going to call this person Sam. Okay. So Sam, and we're going to call this one Lisa. All right. So, same thing is true when you're thinking about Sam. What does Sam do? What are the categories that Sam might have influence in? What are the categories where Sam's sphere of influence is? Is it, maybe Sam is a roofing guy. Okay. Maybe Sam is in lighting. But you want to start thinking about who are the people specifically within the home building space, that you are connected with or could be connected with, and then what are their connections. And here's one of the keys that I wanted to share with you, and I think it's really important when you make these small shifts in the way that you're thinking about it. It can have a dramatic impact for you in very short order. And one of the things to think about, and so one of the things I would do when you're starting to think about your sphere of influence, specifically within the home building ecosystem, you want to begin to identify who are all the players within the home building process. What are the categories of people, of companies within the home building process? And you're going to start to identify, well, who are some of those people that you want to bring into your sphere of influence, and then you want to build their sphere of influence into your sphere of influence. And so some of the first things that I think of when I begin to identify, well, who is this ecosystem within the home building process? So first things we think of are, of course, the home builders themselves, the land developers, and new construction buyers. And you're always going to be building those three databases. As you're growing your niche market in home building, you're always going to be developing three databases of the builders, the developers, and the buyers. And but then beyond that, when you start to really grow out the ecosystem, what you want to start to think about, well, who are some of the other value added partners? Who are some of the people that add value to the home building process that you need to connect with? And actually, it's shocking how many times I've shared this idea with realtors that have either, maybe it's happened occasionally, but most people don't think about it from a strategy standpoint. And I want you to begin to think about this from a strategy perspective. So as you start to think about the home building ecosystem, who are some of the other players? Who are some of the other value added people that are professionals in the home building space? Maybe it's not a builder or developer, but they're in home building and they're connected to the home builders. And the way I think about this is you start to look up the value chain, if you will. So, if I want to connect with builders and I want to connect with new construction buyers and developers, it's not just about meeting all the builders and the developers. It's also starting to identify who are some of those parties that are very active on a daily, weekly, yearly basis in the home building process that you need to connect with. And so very quickly, what are some of those? Some of them are mortgage, first and foremost. That you definitely want to connect with. And in every market, there are a handful of people that are new construction mortgage professionals. And sometimes you can find those by the company. I mean, there are mortgage companies that specialize in new construction loans more than others, but very often it's not just the company, it's the person within the company. In other words, let's say you meet Sam, and Sam is specializes in new construction loans, and Sam may switch to another company. Well, guess what? You're going to follow where Sam goes. And there are always, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or maybe 10 in bigger cities, new construction loan specialists. You want to get every one of those people into your sphere of influence. But it's not just mortgage, it's also landscaping. And so when you begin to think this way, you start to identify and begin to think about, well, who are some of the people that are also selling to the same target audience of builders and building relationships with the same target audience of builders and developers and buyers that I want to. And just a few of them off the top of my head that I can list out for you. So you got mortgage, you got landscaping, you've got home security systems, you got solar panels, you got fencing, and you've got appliances. And the list goes on and on. And when you begin to think in terms of, wow, there's a lot of people in my market who I should be connected with or could be connected with, that they each know of builders as well. They have relationships that I don't have. And you begin to realize that your potential of growing an ecosystem and exploding your sphere of influence within home building is enormous. And so this is an outstanding exercise that most people don't do. And the reason I'm sharing it with you is because it's something that I learned long before I was in real estate. I learned it through recruiting. And if you begin to apply this idea of identifying who are other value providers to the home builders, who are other value providers in the home building process in my local market, who are connected to the builders in a different way than you are. So it's not a competitor, but somebody who would more than often are going to become a partner with you. And there are ways that you can begin to partner with those companies once you meet them, to where you very quickly over the next several months can be developing an enormous leads list of buyers and sellers who may be interested in your services. Okay. So I listed out just a few of them: landscaping, mortgage, home security systems, solar panels, fencing, and appliances, and that list could go on. Okay. Could be cabinet companies. But I want you to begin to think of those categories, and I think of it as looking up the value chain. So rather than, just all the builders that I know or want to know, start to think one level higher. Okay. Who else sells into that same target audience and is networking within the same target audience that you are? And you want to begin to identify who some of those people are. And I'm going to give you a couple quick ideas on how you can do this very quickly. Now, the most time-consuming piece of it is, as always, it's developing the relationships. But if you take this idea and begin to run with it, I promise you there are very, very, very few realtors. First of all, there's very few realtors that even specialize in new construction. I mean, really. There are a handful of realtors in every market. We think it's less than 1 in 1,000 from the data that we've studied. There's a very small number of realtors that specialize in new homes, but even of the ones that do, none of them, or probably maybe 1 out of 10,000, are doing some of these strategies I'm sharing with you. And so this one is about beginning to build out your ecosystem of the other parties who are in the home building process. not necessarily a builder, not a developer, but who are all the other companies, and start to list out what those categories are. Okay. And then within the categories, as you begin to, and you say, maybe you start with mortgage. Okay. And you start to identify, well, who are the mortgage providers of new construction mortgage? And then let's put it over in this one, let's put fencing. Maybe you don't know anybody in these categories yet, but when you start to physically put this together and start to type this out, and we're going to call this one home security. Well, you get the idea. So home security, and you begin to identify this. It starts to focus your mind in ways that you're not doing now. If I'm just going around and I'm just waiting for somebody to happen along that can provide me a lead, um, you might be waiting a long time, right? But if you really want to become the go-to expert in new construction, this is one of the strategies that will move you so much further, so much faster than all the other realtors. And it's begin to identify, well, what are the categories of the home building process? Who are some of the other categories who are adding value, but in a non-competitive way to what I'm doing, to what you're doing as a realtor? And I would start to come up with as many of these categories as I can and begin to type them up someplace or just draw it on a big sheet of paper. Here's you in the middle. Here are the categories. And then you're going to start to think about and attach a name to some of these. Okay, well, who do I know in mortgage? Well, I know, you know, John. No, John's the builder. So we're going to say Julie, she's a mortgage professional in new construction. And you begin to identify who some of those target people are. And then you're going to go out and build a relationship with them. But you always want to be thinking about the next level out. And next week, I'll show you how you can ask these questions to where Julie and Sam and Lisa and whoever's in these other categories will automatically start to think of you and give you leads. Um, so think in terms of one level up the value chain and think of one level out from the people that you know and start to think in terms of categories within the home building ecosystem. So hopefully that's not too much, but I think you get the idea and the thought on it. And then there's two other things I want to share with you about this real quickly. One is, if you're not sure who it is, and you haven't done this already, well, you can always use the yellow pages or you can do a Google search. But one of the things that you should do or could be doing is using LinkedIn. And I don't know how many of you guys are using LinkedIn now, but LinkedIn is a powerful, powerful tool. And the way you're going to do this with LinkedIn, so you could you could type in um, appliances Atlanta, you could type in fencing Atlanta, and you could search for it that way. But here is a search term that I found this to be incredibly helpful. And what I would do is go to LinkedIn and type in the words builder services with quote marks around it, and then whatever your city name is. And let's call this Tampa. Now, this is not going to show very well on mine because I'm on the free version of LinkedIn still, and at a certain time of month, and I'm already at that time of month, I've used up all my credits. So it only gives me 3 credits, and then or 3 people, and then first to next month, I can do the search. And I guarantee you're going to do the search and you're going to put in something like builder services. And that is a absolutely great term to search on. And then your city name. And it's going to show you 3,000 people or 2,000 people. And why do you want to use builder services? Well, because going back to what I said earlier, you're looking for people that are selling into the home building space. Okay. You're looking for people who are going after the same target audience that you are in a non competitive way. And this is going to become a massive, massive ecosystem for you within home building that's going to grow your business very, very quickly. And so here's a great term to search around, and that's builder services. And just go and then change the name to the next city, and start picking the secondary and tertiary markets. what are some of the other smaller communities near you, not just the metro. And what I would do is I would start connecting with them. I don't know. This one says registered nurse, so they're not all going to be perfect. This one says looks like it's a realtor, so that would be a competitor. But in a lot of cases, you're going to start identifying people who are selling to the same builders that you are, and building relationships with the same target audience. And you want to do the same thing with developers. Well, who when you think up the value chain with land developers, who are some of the companies and the categories that sell services um, to a developer? How about civil engineering? How about surveyors? Surveyors have their own trade organization that you can find out who the trade organization is, and you can go find who the land surveyors are. And I believe there's a certification that they get for specifically residential surveying. And you can meet these surveyors and begin to connect with them. No realtors are doing this. Realtors are not doing this. And I hope that you do it, because very quickly you're going to be able to gain an education and understanding about the way the overall ecosystem works, how these different parties play into it, and so there's a lot of value that you're going to get from it, not just buyer and seller leads, and prospects that you want to build relationships with. But we're in a relationship business, and so you want to develop relationships with all the different parties within the home building ecosystem. And this is a very quick way to do it. Now, when you do this, there are a few questions that I recommend that you look into with these folks. So when you go out and let's say you meet with whoever is doing fencing for new construction and selling to the builders, or you meet with the mortgage person, and there are really four or five things that you want to begin to understand about who they are. And I would jot these things down, and you can turn them into a small interview, if you will. I didn't write them up here on a slide or anything, but I'll just tell them to you really quick. Um, First of all, when you go meet with them, it's not about you, and it's not automatically about, well, who do you know, what do you know. It's first of all, it's you want to find out about their business. Okay, so number one, you want to learn about what their business is, and kind of, how long they've been in their business, and what are some of the challenges. What is their business, how big is their business, and how long have they been doing it, and kind of the scope and the size of their business. Second thing you want to learn about is their challenges. What are some of the challenges that they have in their role, in their role within the home building process? Do they have challenges in connecting with builders? Do they have challenges connecting with buyers? Or maybe doesn't even matter to them. If it's a surveyor, they probably don't. They're not too worried about the buyers. But what are the bigger challenges that they have in their role within the home building process? Number three, you want to learn about their perspective. And so you want to have a conversation with them about, tell me about, so you've been doing this a while as a surveyor in residential new construction, as a fencing company in residential new construction. Tell me about your experience with the home building industry here in Atlanta, here in Tampa, here in Detroit, and begin to ask some questions about that. And you're going to be amazed at the things that you're going to learn that are going to come out from this, that you don't have any idea about today. But when you start having these conversations with this home building ecosystem, if you will, and you begin to identify some of those people, and start to connect with them, and you want to find out about their business, their challenges, their perspective. Here's a fourth one: their competitors. Who do you guys really compete with out in the marketplace? And that again is going to expand your network. If you meet one fencing person, and one of the things you might want to ask them, well, how many companies are there that are doing residential fencing in the home building space in our market. And they tell you that there's 5 different companies, and they begin to list those out for you. Are you see what's happened here? You can very, very quickly begin to move to an entirely new level that other realtors are not doing in your understanding about the home building ecosystem. And there's 2 more that I want to share with you. So we talked about their business, their perspective, their challenges, their goals for next year. And by the way, as you're talking about goals, you might want to be talking about their perspective of how next year looks to them. Okay. So again, this is all about learning, and it's about speed learning very, very quickly, and beginning to move way, way beyond what your current sphere of influence is when it comes to home building. Okay. And you notice I haven't, the one thing I have not talked about yet is getting leads from them. Okay. Right now we're just building the relationship and growing the sphere of influence. And the final thing is that you want to talk to them about how can you add value. What is something that if it was in your ability that you could do to add more value to their company? How could you bring value to them? And when you have, and you begin to build this sphere of influence, and you start to target these categories and then people within the categories, you're thinking up the value chain. Who else sells to the builders or new construction buyers? Who else sells to new construction buyers? But right now I'm talking about builders, um, and is a non-competitive to you, but they know a lot of the same people, and they know a lot of people you don't know. Okay. And you're going to begin to build this into your weekly workflow or your monthly workflow, and always be adding 2 or 3 of these people, ideally every week. But if you can only do one a week, and you can build that into your relationships and growing your sphere of influence, the main thing is to begin to do it and be very strategic about it. Identify the people that you're going to be able to add value to, you're going to be able to add perspective to, and they're going to be able to add value to. And you start working that process, and very quickly you're going to see that you have an understanding of the overall the overall home builder market that nobody else, as far as realtors, really has perspective on. Okay. Because nobody's doing this. So, guys, the strategies that I'm trying to share with you are things that I learned over decades, literally decades, not just within home building, but as an executive recruiter, where we had to be daily, really premium networkers. And so some of these are ideas that I don't think most realtors apply, and they certainly don't apply very well when it comes to new construction. If you begin to do this, you will move very, very fast to the front. And next week, I think what I'll do is I'm going to jump back on here on Wednesday morning, and I'm going to talk about how to actually ask for referrals. Um, but look, 22 is your year. Okay. It can be your year. There's a huge opportunity in new construction for realtors that are going to step up their game and take things to a whole new level. I hear on a fairly regular basis, a lot of times I'll talk to realtors, and they're not really sure what their value is in new construction. They think it's just, well, I registered the person and maybe I just need to show up for the closing. And there are people that actually teach that. I disagree with it. Not that you want to overstep your bounds, but you absolutely have a fiduciary and guide responsibility to the buyers that you bring to the table for the builder. And when you begin to step up your game and learn some of these strategies and apply some of these strategies, very, very fast, you move to the front of the pack. And I would love to see you do that, because there's just an enormous, incredible opportunity within new construction. And when you begin to step up your game very quickly, you begin to identify, you begin to be perceived as and identified as the game changer, as the thought leader, as the difference from everybody else. It's not about being bigger. It's not about being better. It's about being different. Okay. So this is one of these strategies that I think I give you 4 or 5 different tips here, or maybe more than that, that you can begin to apply very quickly, start to connect with. Um, so just to summarize it again, very quickly, you can begin to identify who are the categories that sell into the home building space that are non-competitive. What are the categories? List those out. I would put them on a big sheet of paper and start to draw them out. Then begin to identify who are some of the people. Do you know anybody within that category? If you don't, start to find out who's in that category. Who are the 5 companies that do fencing? Who are the 5 mortgage loan officers? And reach out to them and say, hey, I'd like to connect with you to see how we can be strategic partners in helping your business moving forward and help my business move forward, and both of us provide better value to the builders and the developers and the new construction buyers that we're both trying to serve. And people will be very open to that. So you begin to identify those people, and then you're going to go connect with them. You can pick up the phone, you can connect with them on LinkedIn. I showed you a couple ideas on that, and we talked about what are 4 or 5 different questions that you could have, to really strike up a conversation with them and very quickly begin to identify their business, their challenges, their goals for next year, how you can add value to their business. And when you do this, within months, you're going to start to find that you've got a knowledge and an understanding and real leads that are coming from your home building ecosystem, your home building ecosystem sphere of influence that nobody else has. You're going to speak about it in a different way than all the other realtors who have not done any of this. And I hope you take these ideas and apply them. And then, what I'd love for you to do is to reach out to me and let me know if you did it. If you get stuck on it, don't get stuck. Just reach out, send me a DM, and we can hop on a call, or we can hop on a messenger call, or a Zoom call, and I'll tell you how to take it to the next step. But I'm here today because these are strategies that I learned, and they are very, very impactful, very effective to becoming the one and only and the go-to realtor in your market for new construction. And I love teaching other realtors about it. I want to see you guys succeed, just to your heart's delight, and go as far as you want to go. There's a wonderful opportunity in 2022 for realtors in new construction to begin to step up your game. And I hope that person is you. Okay. So if you got anything out of this, I would love for you to take it and apply it, and share it with somebody else. Invite somebody else to the group, because there's a lot of realtors that want to know about new construction that don't really know how to get into it. And this is one simple idea that can change your paycheck and the number of transactions that you do for 22 and beyond. And so I hope you take it and apply it. Hey, happy Thanksgiving to you guys. I hope you have an amazing time with your family and your loved ones. And hope you get lots of turkey and remain healthy. And reach out to me. Let me know how I can help. Love you guys, and hope you have an amazing holiday. And we'll talk to you next week. Take care. Bye.